Imagine waking up to find your sister wearing your wedding ring, sleeping in your bed, and calling your house hers, all while you're still alive. That's not a dream. That was my nightmare. And I didn't scream. I vanished. Then I made them wish I never returned. Hi. My name's Lorraine. I'm 59, and I was married for 22 years to a man named Curtis. I thought I knew betrayal. I thought divorce was the lowest point of my life. But then came something so vile, so twisted, I can barely say it without shaking. My sister, Bianca, married my ex-husband. But that's not even the worst part. They stole my home, faked my signature, sold the deed under my name while I was out of town visiting my daughter in Arizona. And when I came back, everything, my clothes, my books, even my late mother's locket, was on the street. Like garbage. No explanation. No remorse. Just a cold text from Bianca that read, "It's not what it looks like." They claimed it was a misunderstanding, a paperwork mix-up, that I must have signed the deed years ago and forgotten. I knew the way Curtis twisted words. I knew how Bianca faked innocence. They played the same roles they always had, charming and trustworthy. But this time, they weren't going to get away with it. I disappeared. No arguments. No yelling. I just packed what little I had left and walked away from the scene, like a ghost. But I didn't vanish out of weakness. I vanished into strategy. See, what Curtis and Bianca didn't know was that I'd made copies of all my major documents, including the original house deed, signed by me and only me, 5 years before we even divorced. I still had my medical records showing I wasn't even in the state when the forged documents were signed. And I had friends in quiet places, like my former neighbor, Grant, who'd just listed his house next door for sale. I bought it anonymously under a trust name. Watched them move into my home. Watched Bianca pose in the backyard with wine glasses like some TikTok queen. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I waited. Over the next 2 months, I worked with a lawyer, one who specialized in title fraud. We subpoenaed their bank records, traced the notary stamp to a fake address, and even found the lowlife who notarized the forged deed in exchange for concert tickets and a bottle of gin. We built a case so airtight it made my skin tingle. But I didn't want just justice. I wanted humiliation. Something they'd never recover from. So I waited for the perfect day. Their wedding. Yes, Curtis and Bianca planned a flashy garden wedding right in my old backyard. Tacky lanterns. White roses. A big projector screen to show memories of their love story. They didn't know I'd hired a tech crew to override that screen signal from next door. Right at the moment the officiant said, "Do you take this man?" the screen blinked black. Then flickered. On it, in crystal clarity, played surveillance footage of Curtis discussing the forged deed. Bianca bragging to her friend about how easy it was to forge old Lorraine's squiggle. Then the notary laughing and holding up the falsified paperwork. The guests gasped. Bianca screamed. Curtis tried to pull the plug, but the projector was running from my property, 30 feet away. And while their guests stared in horror, the real show arrived, 2 police cruisers pulling into the driveway. Arrest warrants in hand. Curtis was cuffed before he could even say, "I do." Bianca dropped her bouquet and begged me not to press charges. I didn't answer. I just stepped out from the shadows of the neighbor's porch, holding a folder labeled "Deed Reversal and Charges Filed." The guests? They applauded. Some filmed. Others just stared. The best part? The local paper picked up the story. Front page, bride and groom arrested at altar for title fraud, victim reclaims home in daring legal sting. Now, I'm back in my home. The locket is safe around my neck. And the bedroom that once held betrayal now holds peace. Sometimes I sit in the garden with coffee, smiling. Because they thought they buried me, and all I did was plant myself deeper. If this story made your jaw drop even a little, subscribe my channel, like this video, and share it with someone who's trusted the wrong people. And tell me, where are you watching from? Because if betrayal can happen in my backyard, it can happen anywhere. They said they fell in love after the divorce. That it just happened. But let me tell you something, nothing about Curtis and Bianca was accidental. My sister always envied what I had. As kids, she'd steal my clothes. As teens, she'd flirt with my boyfriends. And when I married Curtis, I thought she finally backed off. Until I caught them one night years ago laughing in the kitchen just a little too long, just a little too close. I should have trusted my gut back then. But I was too busy surviving. After the divorce, I kept the house. It was in my name legally. I'd paid most of the down payment from my late father's inheritance. Curtis moved out without much fuss. We agreed to part civilly for our daughter's sake. I didn't know he had already started seeing Bianca. And worse, that she had already started planning. I first sensed something was wrong when I came home after my Arizona trip and saw a padlock on my own front door. I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe renovations. I rang the bell. No answer. I used my spare key. It didn't fit. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, called over the fence and said, "Oh, Lorraine, I thought you'd already moved out. That couple said you'd sold the house to them." Lovely people, they said. Lovely. If only she knew. I called Curtis. No answer. Called Bianca. Straight to voicemail. So I went to the county office. Pulled the records. And there it was in plain ink, deed transfer. Lorraine Hathaway to Curtis and Bianca Miles. Signed. Notarized. Filed. But I never signed it. And, just like that, the blood drained from my face. They hadn't just stolen a house. They'd stolen my home. My history. My safety. The place where I raised my daughter. Buried my dog. Hung wind chimes in the back that still sang when no one was near. And they threw it away like I was some squatter who overstayed her welcome. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because a scream would warn them. And I needed them comfortable, arrogant, even. So I became a shadow. Moved into a cheap motel. Disappeared from social media. Let them think I'd slithered off in shame. I was laying my trap. From the motel, I made moves. First, I reconnected with my old friend Kendra, who worked in real estate law. She helped me track down the fraudulent notary, who left a paper trail of other shady filings. Then I filed an identity theft claim. Quietly. Secretly. Strategically. Meanwhile, Bianca was posting Instagram stories from my garden, my rose garden, which I'd spent 15 years tending. She pranced in a silk robe I swear she stole from my closet, talking about manifesting peace. Peace. In my house. With my husband. On stolen ground. But karma, I've learned, is best served by hand. I spent evenings parked on the street, watching. Timing their routines. I saw how they left the blinds open. I saw the giant projector Curtis installed in the backyard for their wedding ceremony. I smiled. Because I knew what was coming. They thought they'd won. They thought I was broken. But they'd mistaken silence for surrender. And now? Now they were about to learn the difference. People say time heals. But time doesn't heal betrayal, it sharpens it. Makes it surgical. Precise. Especially when you're patient. Especially when you're like me. By the second week in that dingy motel, I had everything mapped out, down to the minute. Curtis left the house at 8:42 a.m. every weekday. Bianca slept in until 10:15. Then she'd do yoga by the kitchen window, sip green juice like she invented wellness, and FaceTime her best friend Marlene to show off the latest renovations they'd made to my home. I watched it all from across the street in my rental car. Every day. The same moves. The same lies. But then something changed. A plumber arrived. Bianca had complained about the guest bathroom sink. She let him in, left him alone. I recognized him, Todd. The same man who fixed that very sink 2 years ago when I still owned the house. And he remembered me. That was the crack I needed. I called Todd that evening and told him everything. Not just about the fraud, but about what I planned to do. And Todd, bless that man's tired soul, he didn't just believe me. He helped me. The next morning, Todd went back, said he needed to recheck something behind the pipes. While Bianca giggled on the phone in another room, Todd pulled up the loose floorboard beneath the sink. It was something I had hidden years ago, back when Curtis first started acting off. I had tucked a sealed envelope under that board. Inside? A certified copy of the original deed with my solo signature. A letter from my lawyer verifying I was the sole owner. And my favorite part, a notarized affidavit from my father's estate proving I paid the down payment in full. Todd slipped it into his toolbox and called me. I met him behind the old church on Lenox Hill. That man could have asked for money. Instead, he said, "Get M for all of us women they think are weak." That envelope became my war drum. Meanwhile, Kendra, my real estate lawyer friend, was working on an even juicier lead. She tracked down the notary who witnessed my forged signature. His name was Greg Soloway, mid-40s, divorced, and stupidly careless. We couldn't reach him directly, but we did find his ex-girlfriend, Maya. And Maya was pissed. Apparently, Greg had once forged her signature on a lease. She hated him. Still had voice messages of him bragging about fake signing some old lady's house away. Kendra offered her immunity and a $1,000 bounty. Maya gave us the full audio files, Greg laughing about Bianca's wine-soaked bribery, Curtis talking about taking Lorraine's house without her knowing. It was gold. And that's when I decided we weren't going to court yet. We were going to their wedding. I started planning the reveal like a stage play. I contacted a media tech who used to work events at City Hall. Hired him anonymously to run a private wedding presentation through the projector on their big day. I even designed the slideshow myself, a sweet start of old family photos, then a cut to Greg's voice recordings, Maya's screenshots, and surveillance clips from neighbors showing Curtis entering the deed office alone, no me in sight. Everything was in place. But there was one final twist I hadn't planned for, something Bianca left behind. Something stupid. Something fatal. While Todd worked in the house, he checked the laundry room. In the cabinets above the dryer, he found a folder. She must have forgotten it. Inside were rough drafts, practice for forging my signature. Over and over. Lorraine Hathaway. Sloppy at first. Then smoother. Tighter. Identical. She practiced, in my house. With my pens. Over my name. And left the evidence like it meant nothing. I took that folder, pressed it against my chest, and smiled. She thought she could erase me. But she just signed her own ending. By the time their wedding week arrived, I had everything ready. The folder of forged signatures. The original deed. The voice memos. The notary's confession. The projector tech scheduled and paid. All I needed now was timing. Bianca had no idea her final dress fitting would be her last moment of peace. I followed her that day, not close enough to be seen, but enough to hear her brag through the open boutique doors. "She's probably in a nursing home by now," she said to Marlene. "We gave her a few months. But I don't think she'll ever show her face again." She giggled. My own sister giggled about burying me alive in paperwork. I could have screamed. But instead, I walked away, straight to the hotel bar where I'd arranged to meet someone else. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Travis. My ex-boyfriend before Curtis. The one I should have married. He was always kind, always honest, and always the one Curtis was secretly jealous of. When I called Travis a week earlier and told him everything, he flew in from Chicago without hesitation. Now, sitting across from me, Travis slid a tiny black USB drive across the table. "I added something," he said. "You'll know when to play it." "What is it?" He smiled. "Just trust me." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but anticipation. Because the very next day, my stolen home would host its second wedding and its final humiliation. At exactly 3:47 p.m. on the day of their ceremony, the backyard was buzzing with white roses, champagne flutes, silk runners, and a rented string quartet. Guests sipped and smiled, oblivious to the fact they were seated on stolen soil. I watched from my new house, Grant's old place next door, dressed in all black, hair pinned, lips calm. The tech crew I hired stood in my garage, tapping their laptop, waiting for my cue. But then, the knock. I opened the side door to see someone I hadn't expected. My daughter. Elena. 25. Smart. Fierce. And until now, completely unaware of what her father and aunt had done. "I found out," she whispered. "I saw the deed transfer in my email." I didn't want to believe it. My breath caught. "I'm not here to stop you, Mom," she added. "I'm here to help." I nearly broke. But instead, I handed her the remote, the one that would trigger the presentation across the projector screen Curtis had set up for their vows. "You press it," I said. At 4:03 p.m., just after the officiant said, "If anyone has reason," the screen behind them flickered. A slideshow began. Photos of Curtis and Bianca laughing. Then an image of the deed. Side-by-side comparisons of my real signature and the forged one. Greg's voice recording. Bianca's wine-soaked brag. Her practice sheets. The crowd fell silent. And then, Travis's surprise. A secret audio file, Curtis, caught in an old phone call with Travis after our divorce. Bianca's always wanted Lorraine's life. She's gonna get it, house and all. She's practicing her signature now. We'll say Lorraine went mad or something. That'll work, right? I saw Curtis drop the champagne glass. Bianca's eyes bulged. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. And then came the sirens. 2 patrol cars rolled up slowly. Calm. Purposeful. Officers stepped out with warrants. Curtis was handcuffed on the deck. Bianca tried to run, but tripped over her own dress. The same dress she mocked me about 2 weeks earlier on her live stream. Elena walked in behind the cops and whispered something to Bianca I'll never forget. "Mom raised me in that house. You tried to bury her, but you only made her bloom louder." As the guests whispered and pulled out their phones, I walked into the backyard through the open gate. Calm. Poised. Like a queen returning to her throne. The air shifted. No one dared look me in the eye. Curtis stared as if he'd seen a ghost. I walked right up to the officiant and said, "You can stop now. The bride and groom are being escorted to a different kind of ceremony." The crowd applauded. I thought walking back into my house would feel like victory. I thought I'd throw open the doors, take a deep breath of familiar air, and feel peace wash over me. But that's not what happened. No, it felt like walking into a stranger's lie. A beautiful, polished lie built on my bones. Everything was different. The walls were painted ivory, not the sage green I'd loved. My grandmother's quilt gone. My wind chimes replaced with gold wind sculptures that didn't make a sound. The energy of the house, it had changed. It was hollow, but I was determined to reclaim it. The police sealed off the wedding site, and both Bianca and Curtis were taken in on charges of fraud, identity theft, and property seizure. I signed the restoration order the very next morning. The house was mine again. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. I spent hours walking through each room like an archaeologist at a crime scene. I opened drawers, checked closets, lifted rugs. Some of my old things remained tucked in boxes in the garage, unlabeled, as if they didn't matter. As if I didn't matter. My late mother's diary was water-stained but intact. Her brooch, broken. But there. Then came the attic. It was Bianca's voice in my head that pushed me to check it. I remembered her saying once during a Christmas years ago, "God, Lorraine, you're such a hoarder. Bet you've got skeletons in that attic." She laughed. But something about the way she said it stayed with me. I climbed up the old pull-down ladder alone. Dust clouded the beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with insulation, silence, and something else, secrecy. At first, I saw nothing unusual. A few holiday bins. Empty boxes. But then I noticed a tarp tucked into the far corner, covered in what looked like a painter's cloth. I pulled it off and froze. It was a safe. My safe. The same one that used to sit in the back of my bedroom closet, the one Curtis always claimed he'd never found after the divorce. I remembered what was inside: personal letters, medical records, documents I hadn't even thought of in years, and a sealed red envelope with my updated will. With shaking hands, I turned the dial. And it opened. Inside, everything was there. But something was added. A USB drive. Labeled only, Play Me. I brought it down to my laptop, heart racing. Plugged it in. A video loaded. Bianca, sitting on my bed, speaking into a webcam like she was filming some sick documentary. "If this ever comes out," she said, "just know I had no choice. Curtis said he'd leave me if I didn't help. And Lorraine? She always had everything. It was time I took something back." She stared at the screen, unblinking. She doesn't deserve that house. She never did. I was always smarter. She just got lucky. Now I'm taking what I should have had all along. I sat there, staring at her face, my sister, my blood admitting it all. And worse? Smiling, I copied the video to every drive I owned. I emailed it to the detective, the prosecutor, the news reporter who'd begged for an exclusive. I wasn't just taking back my house. I was taking back my name. I thought it was over. I thought the footage from the attic, the confessions, the forged signatures, the arrest at the altar, would be the final nail. But I should have known. Bianca wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The first warning came from my daughter. Elena called late at night, her voice thin and tight. "Mom, I just got a message. From Aunt Bianca. From jail." My stomach dropped. She said you're manipulating the story. That you forged evidence to ruin her marriage. She begged me to testify on her behalf, to say you've always been unstable. That you were jealous. Jealous. That word again. I could barely get a breath out. "What did you say?" "I blocked her," Elena whispered. "And I reported it. But Mom, she's desperate. If she's reaching out to me, she's reaching out to others too." She was right. Over the next 2 days, my old high school friend Janice called, confused. Said Bianca had messaged her on Facebook, saying I was having a late life breakdown. That I was rewriting the past to frame her and Curtis. She even posted a cryptic message through a friend's account. "Don't believe everything you hear. Sometimes the real villain is the one with the most sympathy." She was trying to poison the well. Turn the narrative. Smear me before trial. But I didn't panic. I prepared. See, I'd been building a new kind of file. Not legal evidence, emotional evidence. I printed every message Bianca had ever sent Elena. Every DM she sent to Janice. Even a voice note she accidentally left on a mutual friend's voicemail, saying Lorraine's crazy but smart. I need people to turn on her before the jury does. That voicemail? I framed it like art. But the real twist was who she tried to contact next. My ex-husband's mother. Ruth Miles. Curtis's mother. Bianca's former confidant. Ruth and I had once been close, but after the divorce, we drifted. I assumed she'd sided with her son. But when Bianca called her from jail, Ruth answered. And recorded the call. I got the message a day later. It was Ruth, voice steady, clipped. "Lorraine, I thought you should have this. I always knew Bianca was poison. But this call, this was venom." She sent the full recording. Bianca begging, manipulating, threatening to make something up about me if Ruth didn't say I had mental issues in court. She even offered Ruth a cut of whatever was left in Curtis's offshore account. Bribery. Coercion. Desperation incarnate. I played that audio on loop in my kitchen, sipping tea, as the wind moved through my reclaimed wind chimes outside. Then I called the DA and sent the file. He didn't even need to listen to it twice. "We're adding witness tampering to her charges," he said. And Curtis's too. They're both cooked. But I wasn't done. Because Bianca wanted the world to think I was weak. Fragile. Old. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I scheduled a press interview. I wore my mother's brooch for the interview. The one Bianca tried to throw in the trash. I pinned it to my jacket like armor. It was the first time I'd been on camera in years. My palms were sweating, but my spine felt like steel. The local news station gave me 20 minutes. I gave them truth that burned. I told them everything, how my ex-husband and my sister plotted behind my back, how they faked my signature, transferred my home, and publicly humiliated me. I described the wedding, day sting, the evidence I'd uncovered, and the police arrests. And when the reporter asked, why not just move on? I looked into the camera and said, because silence is where thieves thrive. And I'm not just reclaiming my house. I'm reclaiming every inch of respect they tried to steal. It aired that night. And the response? Immediate. Hundreds of women wrote to me, mothers, widows, grandmothers, saying they'd experienced something similar. A stolen home. A forged signature. A betrayal from the one person they trusted most. I wasn't just speaking for me anymore. I had become a voice for women who'd been erased. But not everyone applauded. Less than 24 hours later, the smear campaign began. A leaked psychiatric report hit the tabloids. The headline? Breakdown? Source claims Lorraine Hathaway was hospitalized for delusions in 2015. I stared at the screen. My face beneath bold red letters. She imagined it all, says insider. It was a complete fabrication. There was no such hospitalization. No diagnosis. Nothing. But it spread like poison. Comments flooded in. Is she even telling the truth? Sounds like a bitter ex. Wouldn't be the first time someone made up a story for fame. It was working. Bianca had planted a shadow over my story. I called the station. They were furious. We vetted your background, Lorraine. This wasn't in your records. Because it's not real, I said. And I'm going to prove it. I spent the next 36 hours digging. Old medical records. Health insurance statements. Every hospital I'd ever been to. Nothing. No mental health evaluations. No admissions. No medications. Clean. But then, I found the leak. It came from an old therapy form, a single optional survey I'd filled out after my divorce, where I ticked a box marked "sought emotional support after loss." It wasn't a diagnosis. It wasn't even confidential. Just a stray piece of paper, digitally stored in a clinic Curtis used to manage the IT for. And now, weaponized. I called the clinic. The administrator gasped when I explained. That file shouldn't even be accessible to the public, she said. Someone must have hacked the archive. We'll trace the access log. 2 hours later, I got the call back. It was downloaded remotely. From a device linked to Curtis Miles's old network ID. We're filing a report. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop, recorded a short, sharp video response, and uploaded it everywhere I could. Let me be clear, I said. I am not ashamed of seeking support after loss. What I am ashamed of is a man and a woman so desperate to erase my truth, they'd falsify records to frame me as unstable. That video went viral. More people came to my defense than I could count. Legal experts weighed in. Doctors. Even former therapists. All calling the leak unethical, defamatory, and criminal. And then an anonymous email. From a burner account. All it said was, "They're scared. Curtis is trying to destroy everything before the trial. He has another plan. You need to look into the storage unit. Eastwood facility. Unit 317. Trust me. No name. No clue who sent it. But I knew where I'd be going the next morning. The Eastwood storage facility sat on the edge of town, just beyond the train tracks, where everything forgotten eventually rusts. It was the kind of place no one asks questions. Rent is paid in cash. Locks are changed in silence. I went early. Alone. The number, Unit 317, was tucked far in the back row, out of sight from the main gate. I stood in front of it for a long moment, keys in my hand, breath tight in my chest. Whoever sent that email, whether friend or stranger, had just cracked open the last vault of this betrayal. And I had to know what they were hiding. I opened the door. Dust flew into the light. Stale air. Boxes, bins, plastic-wrapped furniture. But in the corner, stacked neatly like a shrine, were documents. Rows of folders. Labeled in Curtis's handwriting. Emergency plan. Lorraine profile. Medical override. Guardianship transfer. I knelt down. My fingers trembled as I opened the first one. And then, I stopped breathing. Inside was a fake medical profile, printed, bound, signed, with a fabricated psychiatric diagnosis. Same lie they leaked to the media. But this one went further. It included a recommendation for involuntary guardianship, suggested by a doctor I'd never met, and signed illegally by Curtis Miles. He'd planned it long before the wedding, maybe even before the forged deed. He was going to have me declared mentally unfit, strip my legal power, and assume guardianship over my assets, my bank accounts, my estate, my medical choices. He was going to erase me, not just from the house, from existence. The next folder made it worse. Inside were typed journal entries forged in my voice. Things like, I can't tell what's real anymore. Sometimes I hear my mother talking to me from the attic. I forget the year. I forget my name. It was all calculated, polished, weaponized helplessness. The final file made my stomach turn, a notarized draft petition, already signed, requesting my placement in a senior psychiatric facility, out of state. The signature line? My name, forged again. And attached? A draft obituary. No death certificate. No body. Just a template. With my name, a photo from 10 years ago, and the words, Lorraine Hathaway, 59, passed quietly after a long battle with mental illness. She is survived by her sister Bianca Miles and former spouse Curtis Miles, who cared for her in her final years. I dropped the file. My whole body shook. They were planning to bury me alive. Not in a grave, but in a narrative. In a fake timeline where I never fought back. But I wasn't finished. I took photos of everything. Packed the files into a box. And I didn't just send them to the DA this time. I sent them to every woman who had written to me. Every reporter who'd questioned my sanity. Every viewer who had clicked, maybe she's making it up. I gave them the whole picture. And that afternoon, the news ran a new headline, exclusive, sister and ex-husband accused of attempted legal erasure, new evidence reveals fake psych reports, obituary draft. The public flipped. Sympathy turned into outrage. People who once doubted me began begging for interviews. Legal analysts called it the most elaborate guardianship fraud attempt they'd seen in decades. And Bianca? She tried to blame it all on Curtis. Claimed she didn't know. But the paper trail said otherwise. Her fingerprints were on 2 forged entries. Her name on the planning emails. Her voice, once again, caught whispering in an old voicemail, "We just need her out of the picture. Then we're free." Out of the picture. That's what they wanted. But I was never a picture. I was the frame. The foundation. And now, I was the one holding the brush. They said I didn't have to attend the pretrial deposition. That my lawyer could handle it. That I'd already done enough. But I wanted to look Curtis in the eye. I needed him to see what he didn't destroy. The room was cold. A single table, 2 chairs. My attorney on one side. His on the other. Curtis walked in late, like always. Arrogant. Press shirt. No tie. A smirk curled beneath his carefully trimmed beard, the same smirk I once mistook for charm. He looked at me like I was still the woman who once ironed his shirts and forgave his affairs. But I wasn't her anymore. She died the day he forged my name. What stood before him now? That was someone he created by accident. "Lorraine," he said softly, sitting down like we were on a date. "You look good." I didn't respond. "Listen," he continued, adjusting his cuffs, "this has all gotten out of hand." Bianca panicked. I panicked. But we can fix it. We can settle. My lawyer leaned in. "You mean drop all charges in exchange for what?" Curtis turned to me. "I'll give you the house. Public apology. Whatever you want. We just need this to go away. I'm facing prison. So is Bianca. If you do this, the media will crucify us." I tilted my head. "Curtis," I said slowly, "I'm not here for the house." He blinked. "Then what?" "I'm here for the truth." I slid a manila envelope across the table. He didn't open it right away. His fingers hovered over the flap like they already knew what was inside. "Storage unit," I said. "Eastwood. Unit 317. His face drained. "You really should have changed the lock." He opened the envelope. Inside were copies of everything. The fake medical documents, the forged journal entries, the guardianship plan, the obituary with my face under the words, "Quiet passing." He didn't speak. "Do you know what it feels like," I whispered, "to read your own obituary written by the man you once loved? Do you know what it feels like to be legally erased while still breathing?" He shifted in his seat. "I was trying to protect, you were trying to replace me." I snapped. "Replace me with Bianca. With the life you thought she deserved. With the house you didn't earn. With the identity you thought no one would question. You wanted me gone. But now I'm the one sitting across from you. And you're the one begging for mercy." The court reporter paused, glancing between us like she'd accidentally wandered into a confession. Then Curtis said something I didn't expect. "She said you'd never fight back." I froze. "Bianca," he added. "She said you were too sentimental. Too proud. That you'd rather disappear than make a scene. That's why we did it. Because you were predictable." That's when I smiled. "You were right," I whispered. "I was predictable. Until you made me unpredictable." Then I stood. Slowly. Pushed my chair in. "This isn't about revenge, Curtis. This is about survival. And for the first time, you're the one who won't." I left before he could respond. Outside, the sky was clear. Cold. The kind of cold that doesn't bite, it awakens. I walked back to my car, slipped off my jacket, and breathed. Let the court finish the job. I had already won. The morning the new headlines hit, I was planting tomatoes in the garden my mother once called her sanctuary. I had just started reclaiming the land, my land, pulling out the lavender bushes Bianca planted like they were her legacy. That's when my phone buzzed. A news alert. Same outlet that ran my story now flashing a new one. Exclusive. Video allegedly shows Lorraine Hathaway screaming at elderly neighbor. Abuse claims surface. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I read it again. Abuse? Then the video auto-played. It showed a woman, graying hair, back hunched, yelling from a porch. The footage was grainy, cropped. The voice, similar to mine, screamed, "Get off my property. You worthless old hag." The caption read, "Leaked by anonymous source close to the Miles family." My vision tunneled. My first thought wasn't panic, it was Bianca. She'd pulled one last filthy card. If she couldn't paint me crazy, she'd paint me cruel. I knew immediately it was fake. But I also knew the neighbors might not. The media might not. And once doubt is planted, it grows faster than truth. I called the journalist who originally aired my interview. She answered on the first ring. "It wasn't you," she said. "I know. We're already looking into the footage metadata." I hung up and went straight to the source, Mrs. Holloway, the neighbor in the video. The one they claimed I screamed at. She opened the door with tea in her hand. "I saw the clip," she said. And I laughed. "That wasn't you. That was a deep fake. And a poor one. My daughter's in tech," she said. "It's AI generated. Whoever made it used an old Ring cam angle from last year. Cropped it. Dubbed in your voice." We pulled the footage from her real Ring archives, same date, same timestamp, and guess what? In the original clip, no one was on the porch. Nothing happened. They used old footage of the porch, added a shadow, and dubbed in a voiceover using AI. It was sloppy, but it was meant to distract. To throw the public off right before Curtis and Bianca's hearing. I filed a defamation suit immediately. But I wasn't done. I remembered something months ago. When Bianca first moved in, she'd bragged on Instagram Live that she had installed internal security cameras to protect the renovations. She showed the living room, the hallway, even the kitchen. The devices were still in the house. I had disabled them, but I hadn't destroyed the hard drive. I pulled it from the basement cabinet where Curtis had stashed the server. Plugged it in. Pulled the recent files. And there it was. Bianca and Curtis rehearsing the fake abuse video. Bianca pacing in my old robe, mimicking my walk. Curtis filming with a hood pulled up. A script on the table. Laughter. Her voice, "She's gonna lose everything when they think she beats old ladies." I didn't send that to the police. I sent it straight to the newsroom. The headline dropped like thunder. "Fraud duo faked abuse video to frame victim. Unedited footage leaked." The public turned like a tide. Sympathy became fury. Support became action. People flooded the prosecutor's office demanding harsher charges. Elder fraud. Defamation. Cyber manipulation. Bianca's bail was revoked. She was moved to solitary for tampering. And me? I went back to my garden. Dug my hands into the dirt. Felt the roots. The soil. The history. And this time, it felt safe. Because every time she tried to bury me, she forgot I was the seed. They say prison humbles people. But Bianca never learned humility. She learned storytelling. I got the tip from a bookstore employee in town, a woman who'd followed my story online. She messaged me late one evening with a screenshot attached. "Lorraine, is this real? She's releasing a memoir." There it was. The pre-order page. Buried by Blood. My story of sisterhood, silence, and survival. By Bianca Miles. The blurb was nauseating. "This is the true account of how I was emotionally abused for years by a sister who made me feel invisible. When I found love, she tried to destroy it. And when she couldn't control the story, she lied. This is my voice. My truth." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. Bianca couldn't win in court. So now she was trying to win in public opinion, painting herself as the silenced hero. And me? The villain in pearls. But I didn't panic. I pre-ordered 5 copies. The publisher was a shady little print-on-demand house, probably desperate for drama. They clearly hadn't done their due diligence. But I had. When the book arrived, I read it cover to cover in a single night. It was delusion printed in ink. She twisted every memory into a martyr's cry. Claimed Curtis rescued her from a controlling sister. Said I had episodes where I'd scream at mirrors. That I stole her boyfriend in college and that the house was always meant to be hers. But one chapter, one paragraph, stood out. Because Bianca made a mistake. A factual mistake. She wrote about the day she and Curtis found the deed papers in Lorraine's study and realized she'd left the house legally vulnerable due to her missing signature. She described the papers, the pen, the timestamp on the envelope, even mentioned the notary by name. There was just one problem. That envelope, those specific papers, didn't exist until months later. In fact, they were part of the forged package she and Curtis submitted during the title theft. And the notary? Had already confessed under oath that Bianca was the one who brought him the papers, forged and dated back herself. The notary's testimony had a timestamp. So did Bianca's chapter. They didn't match. It was proof of premeditated forgery, in her own words. I smiled. I called my lawyer. She read the passage. Then she laughed. This book just handed us a confession in print, she said. We don't even need a handwriting expert. She documented the fraud herself. We filed a motion the next morning to submit the book as evidence. The DA nearly wept with joy. The media picked it up instantly. Convicted fraudster incriminates herself in memoir, book now key evidence in trial. The publisher pulled all future shipments. The book's Amazon page was taken down. And the pre-orders? Turned into refund notices. But I kept my 5 copies. Framed one. Signed it myself, to Lorraine. The woman who turned fiction into justice. Bianca tried to write history. But I turned her pen into a weapon. And now? She wasn't just buried by her lies. She was published by them. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address. No stamp. Just hand-delivered by a court assistant after a hearing. She handed it to my attorney, said, "This is for Ms. Hathaway." From Mr. Miles. Then walked away. Curtis. I should have torn it in half. But curiosity is a cruel thing. I waited until I was home. Sat in my kitchen, the one he tried to steal from me. Poured tea. Lit the candle my daughter gave me. Then opened it. His handwriting hadn't changed. Still tight. Controlled. Like someone always trying to look perfect. Lorraine, I know you have no reason to trust me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need your help. Bianca is turning on me. She's claiming the entire fraud was my doing. That she was coerced. That I manipulated her. The prosecution believes her. They've offered her a reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation. But I have proof that she planned everything. Voice recordings. Emails. Even her outline for the fake obituary. If I testify, I can help you destroy what little credibility she has left. All I ask is that you speak to the judge before sentencing. Ask for leniency. I don't want to die in prison. Please. Curtis, he'd always known how to plead just right. How to sound broken without being honest. How to offer what he wanted to give, not what you needed to hear. But I also knew he wasn't lying about Bianca flipping. She was a survivor. And survivors, when cornered, eat whoever's nearest, including the ones who built their escape tunnel. I reread the line, "I don't want to die in prison." And something about that made me smile. Because he'd sentenced me to a living death, signed me off as mentally unstable, tried to bury me in silence, erase me with documents and lies. But now he was asking me to save him. I called my lawyer. Let him testify, I said. Let him hand us everything he has. And the leniency? She asked. I'll consider it, I said. But only if he agrees to one condition. We drafted a response letter that afternoon. Just one paragraph. No greeting. No closure. Just a demand. You may testify, and I will speak to the judge, but only if you sign over every remaining asset in your name, both public and hidden. Stocks. Savings. Overseas accounts. trusts, everything. In return, I will ask the judge to consider your cooperation when assigning your cell. Not your freedom, just your view. And if you lie or hold anything back, know this: I've been buried before. And I always come back up. He signed it within 48 hours. He gave up everything: the hidden account in the Cayman Islands, the backup fund under his cousin's name, even the gold coins in his safety deposit box labeled Hurricane Stash. He gave it all to avoid dying behind concrete and iron. And at sentencing, I stood before the judge and said, "Your Honor, Curtis Miles has chosen to cooperate not out of remorse, but out of self-preservation. I ask only that you recognize this for what it is: a man finally doing the right thing because he ran out of wrong ones. Let him see the sun through a small window. But let him live with the knowledge that the woman he tried to erase now owns everything he built." The judge nodded. Curtis was sentenced to 19 years with no early parole. And me? I walked out of that courtroom not just with my house. I walked out with his legacy. Bianca wasn't built for prison. No silence, no spotlight, no silk robes or spa days. And definitely no one to manipulate. So she found someone. A guard named Wilson. Young, greedy, and oblivious to the storm he was about to invite into his life. They started small. Wilson smuggled in makeup. Then a burner phone. Then connections. Bianca used him to contact a tabloid journalist known for running exclusive inmate interviews. The kind of trashy, unverified pieces that asked no questions, just posted whatever earned clicks. And suddenly, there it was. Exclusive. I was set up. Bianca Miles breaks her silence from behind bars. The article was disgusting. She claimed I'd been jealous since childhood. Said I was always emotionally abusive. That she and Curtis rescued my house from my spiraling delusion. Even went as far as to say she needed help. We just didn't know how to give it. I never meant to hurt her. But Lorraine, she always saw me as a threat. And now she wants revenge. Not justice. She cried in the video clip, crocodile tears running down her powdered cheeks, a full face of makeup courtesy of Wilson's smuggling. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. Because Bianca, in all her desperate vanity, had handed me exactly what I needed. See, what the tabloid didn't know, what Bianca forgot, was that prison calls are monitored. Even burner phones leave metadata. And Wilson? He wasn't just reckless. He was careless. I contacted the Department of Corrections. Shared the article. The footage. And within 48 hours, they opened an internal investigation. They didn't just find the phone. They found Wilson's bank transfers, messages, and a hidden camera inside Bianca's cell that she used to record her interview. She was immediately placed in segregation. But I wasn't satisfied. Because now the public had questions. Doubts. Headlines clashed. Victim or villain? The Hathaway sisters. Truth or tragedy? The noise was back. And I needed silence. I needed clarity. I needed the truth to echo louder than her lies. So I went on national television. Not local news. National. My attorney helped set it up with a major network. Primetime interview. Studio lights. Audience. I walked in wearing navy blue and my mother's brooch. Sat down opposite the anchor. The red light blinked on. And I told everything. From the day I found my house sold out from under me, to the attic confession, to Curtis's failed deal, and Bianca's staged memoir and fake abuse video. I even held up the forged obituary they wrote about me and read it aloud. Lorraine Hathaway passed quietly after a long battle with mental illness. Then I looked into the camera and said, well, here I am. Breathing. Stronger. Louder. And undeniably alive. The anchor blinked back tears. The audience applauded. And the network? Released the episode under the title, Erased but Not Forgotten, The Woman Who Took Back Her Name. By the time the segment ended, Bianca's article had been pulled from every major platform. Her journalist partner was discredited. And Wilson? Fired and charged. But the real twist came the next morning. A letter from Bianca. One sentence. Handwritten. Shaky. You always knew how to turn pain into power. For once, I didn't feel rage. I felt done. Because the more she screamed, the louder I reflected. And in the war between voice and echo, truth always wins. I thought I'd uncovered it all. Every forgery, every plan, every lie they wrapped around my name like barbed wire. But trauma has a way of hiding things in your own memory, especially the ones that began before the betrayal, before adulthood, before you even knew what betrayal was. It started with a box in the attic. Again. I'd avoided it for months. Marked old legal, it was dusty, water-stained, and sealed with layers of cracked duct tape. I assumed it was just old insurance papers or expired tax forms. But something pulled me toward it, like a whisper I didn't know I'd been hearing for years. Inside were 3 thick folders. One was my birth certificate, but not the one I'd always known. This version was amended. At the top, Lorraine Grace Hathaway. But in the notes section, adoption finalized October 1968. Previous record sealed. I blinked. I was born in August of 1968. Why would there be an adoption 2 months later? The next folder held older papers, hospital forms, and then a name. Baby girl, Bianca Grace. Mother, Margaret Hathaway. Father, unknown. Born, August 12, 1968. My birthday. And beneath it, another form. Handwritten. Faded. Infant twins separated at birth per parental request. One child retained by mother, the other placed under care of maternal aunt. I dropped the paper. No. Bianca wasn't my younger sister. She was my twin. Separated. Hidden. Lied about. My mother kept me. Her twin went to our aunt, who raised her 2 towns over, never telling her the full truth. Bianca was never told we were twins. Just that we were distant sisters years apart, products of a complicated family. And apparently, she found out. I don't know when. Maybe a few years ago. Maybe right before she started dating Curtis. But it explained everything. The obsession. The competition. The constant comparison. The feeling that she deserved what I had. Because on some subconscious level, she thought I stole her life. And when she found out the truth, found out we were once equals, born of the same blood, but raised on different sides of the fence, her rage must have exploded into something she couldn't contain. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted restoration. A sick form of balance. If I had the house, the name, the history, she'd take all of it back. Even if it meant rewriting everything. I stared at the records, my body ice cold. I never knew. But someone did. My mother. She died 5 years ago. Never told me. Never told either of us. And now the sins of that silence had detonated across my entire life. I could have burned those papers. Pretended I never found them. But I didn't. I added them to the case file. Because no matter how deep the betrayal runs, truth doesn't weaken when exposed. It clarifies. And now, the world would understand that this wasn't just a story of fraud or a stolen house. It was a story of 2 sisters born together and torn apart. The DNA test came back in a manila envelope. No fanfare. No camera crews. Just facts, printed in sterile black font. Probability of full sibling relationship, 99. 9,987% conclusion. Individuals share identical maternal and paternal lineage. Identical twins. I sat alone when I opened it. The wind outside was still. No birds. No traffic. Just me. And the proof that the woman who stole my home shared my face before she ever learned to speak. It hit like a slow avalanche. Bianca wasn't just my betrayer. She was my reflection. My stolen twin. The girl who was never held in the hospital bassinet beside me. The one raised by someone else while I cried in the arms of a mother who kept only one. I'd never felt so full of understanding and so hollow at the same time. My attorney submitted the findings to the court. It wasn't necessary for the fraud case. But it mattered. Context matters. People needed to know this wasn't just about property. It was about identity. Legacy. Inheritance of both pain and privilege. When we walked into the courtroom that week, Bianca was already seated at the defense table. She looked smaller. Pale. Makeup removed. Hair pulled back like a schoolgirl caught cheating on a test. But when they read the DNA report aloud, her mask shattered. She stood, unshackled, unguarded, unfiltered. Liars, she screamed. All of you. She knew. She knew, and she left me. The judge banged the gavel. Order, Ms. Miles, sit down, but she didn't. She was chosen. Bianca wailed, pointing at me like I was a ghost come to haunt her. She got the house, the mother, the name. I got nothing. I got tossed to a woman who couldn't stand kids, who told me I was lucky to have a roof. She turned toward me. You knew, she growled. I didn't, I said softly. Not until last week. She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Of course. Of course it was always a secret. Of course I was never enough to be told. And then she crumbled. Right there in court, Bianca collapsed to her knees. Not in drama. Not in performance. In grief. The same courtroom that once watched her lie now watched her break. Her attorney rushed to her side. Medics called. She was sedated, escorted out. A continuance granted for mental health review. And me? I stood still. Unmoving. Unapplauding. Because the one person who had tried to bury me had finally buried herself. But not with malice. Not with manipulation. With the truth. A truth we both deserved at birth, but were denied for decades. After the hearing, Elena, my daughter, grabbed my hand. Mom, she whispered, are you okay? I didn't answer. Because the truth is I wasn't. I was shaken. Shattered. But stronger. I looked back at the empty defense table where my sister had sat, and I whispered to myself, she didn't want my house. She wanted to be let in. But she never knocked. It took me 3 days to decide. 3 days of pacing the garden. 3 days of rereading the court order that said Bianca was now in a psychiatric evaluation facility for mental breakdown and delusional grief response. 3 days of thinking, she tried to erase me. She tried to take everything. And yet, I scheduled a visit. I didn't tell my lawyer. I didn't tell Elena. I just drove an hour outside the city to a gray building with windows that didn't open and doors that buzzed before they clicked. The nurse brought me to a visitor's room. Plexiglass wall. 2 chairs. 1 phone. I waited. And then, she walked in. Bianca was thinner. Pale. Wearing state-issued gray clothes that looked too big. Her hair was pulled back tight, but her eyes, they were wild with exhaustion. Not the kind you get from no sleep. The kind you get when you've fought ghosts your whole life and only just realized they were real. She sat. Stared at me. I picked up the phone on my side. She hesitated, then lifted hers. For a full minute, we said nothing. Then finally, she whispered. Lorraine. Not a snarl. Not a curse. Just my name. You came, she said. I did. I didn't think you would. You didn't think I'd fight for the house either, I said. And yet, she cracked a broken smile. Touché. Then silence again. Until she asked, softly, why didn't she tell us? It wasn't venomous. It was a child's question. Raw. Needing. Our mother, I said, voice trembling. I don't know. Maybe she thought she was protecting us. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was selfishness. I don't have the answer. Bianca swallowed hard. Her voice dropped to a rasp. All those years, I thought I was just less. Just the spare. But I felt it. Every time I saw you. At every holiday. Every party. I felt it. I nodded slowly. You were never the spare. You were my sister. You always were. She wiped her eye quickly, embarrassed by her own tears. I hated you for so long, Lorraine. And I didn't even know why. I thought if I could take everything from you, maybe I'd feel full. But it didn't work. I just got emptier. A beat passed. Then she said something I never expected. I'm sorry. I felt the glass between us press in. Not from her hand. From the weight of that sentence. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I just didn't want to die without saying it. And here's what surprised me most. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that moment. Because I saw the child in her, the one our mother left behind. The one raised in confusion. In secrets. In absence. And even though she made her own choices, even though she burned my life to the ground, she finally knew. She finally faced it. And so I said, "I forgive you, Bianca." She broke. Her body trembled. She dropped the phone and covered her face with both hands like she'd just been struck. She mouthed one word before she was escorted out. Sister. It was the first time she'd ever called me that. And maybe the last. The morning of Bianca's sentencing, I woke to find a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Handwritten. Yellowed. My name in cursive, familiar. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My mother's. I stared at it, stunned. She'd passed 5 years ago. I'd gone through her things 100 times. Why was I just seeing this now? Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded 3 times, slightly brittle at the edges. A notary stamp dated it October 17th, 1999. I opened it with shaking hands. Lorraine, if you're reading this, then it means the truth has surfaced, truth I was too weak to face while alive. Bianca is your twin. I separated you at birth out of fear. I was alone. Your father had vanished. I couldn't afford to raise 2 girls, and I made a choice I never forgave myself for. I gave Bianca to my sister under a quiet arrangement. It was supposed to be temporary. But I got scared. She told me Bianca was difficult, that she wouldn't bond. I let it happen. I let you grow up thinking she was just a cousin. Then a half-sister. Then a burden. You were always the good one. The calm one. The one who looked like me. Bianca had your father's eyes and his temper. But it was never your fault. None of it was your fault. I broke something between you two before you even had a chance to know what you were. If you ever have the strength, forgive me. And if you ever can, help her. Love always, Mom. I sat there in silence. 25 years that letter had been sealed. Hidden. Maybe she was too afraid I'd find it while she was still alive. Maybe she hoped it would never be needed. But now it was everything. I brought the letter to my attorney that afternoon. She looked at it, then at me. You know the DA's pushing for the max, she said. 12 years. Fraud, tampering, defamation, elder manipulation. They're going hard. I know, I whispered. And you? She asked. What do you want? I took a long breath. I want her held accountable, I said. But I don't want her to rot. She blinked. I continued, Bianca doesn't need a cell. She needs a mirror. She needs to sit in front of herself and see the wreckage. And then, maybe rebuild. We submitted a revised victim statement. One that supported a split sentence, 5 years psychiatric rehabilitation with supervision, followed by 5 years of parole with mandatory therapy and restitution. The courtroom buzzed when the judge read it. Bianca didn't look at me. Not right away. But when the sentence was handed down and the gavel fell, she turned. Tears in her eyes. Lips parted like she wanted to say something. But all she did was nod. Once. And that was enough. Because I wasn't doing this to be the bigger person. I was doing this to end the cycle. The silence. The secrets. The punishment without healing. My mother was gone. The truth had bled into daylight. And now Bianca would face herself, finally. Not as my enemy. Not as my shadow. But as the sister she had always been, and never understood. It came in a padded envelope. No return address. Postmarked from the rehabilitation center. Inside, a leather-bound journal. The kind I used to keep in my 20s. Slender. Unassuming. Tied with a silk ribbon. There was a note paper-clipped to the front. Typed. Lorraine, this was part of Bianca's therapy. A requirement. She asked that this specific section be sent to you. Case Counselor S. Adams. My hands hesitated at the cover. A knot formed in my chest. After everything, why would I willingly read the mind of the woman who stole my house, my name, and almost my sanity? But I opened it. The first few pages were general reflections. Remorse. Grief. Hazy memories of our childhood that I hadn't known she'd remembered. A birthday party we never shared. A photo of me on a swing she claimed to have watched from the fence line. And then, I reached the section labeled, The Truth About Curtis. I read slowly. He never told me I was your sister. Not until a year into our relationship. He said, Isn't it wild that you and Lorraine look so much alike? And I laughed. Then he added, You're alike. You're twins. I thought he was joking. But he showed me a document. An old medical record he said he found in your mother's closet. Something she kept hidden. He knew the whole time. He didn't tell me to protect me. He told me to weaponize me. He said if I wanted a life like yours, I'd need to be stronger than you. She's always been the star, he told me. If you want the house, you have to outshine her. Be the better version. So I started mimicking you. The way you stood. The way you dressed. The way you spoke in court when you were calm. He told me we were taking back what should have been mine. But it wasn't for me. It was for him. He hated that you left him. Hated that you flourished. And I became the perfect tool. He didn't just pit us against each other. He scripted the war. I lowered the journal. It felt like being slapped by silence. I had always blamed Bianca for orchestrating the madness. But Curtis had known everything. From the beginning. The records. The twinship. The fragile guilt between two women who never had a chance to choose each other. He didn't just manipulate me through marriage. He manipulated our blood. Every cruel thing Bianca did, he didn't stop her. He fed her. Dressed it up as revenge. Dared her to compete against me for a life she never had. And the worst part? He watched from the sidelines like a director watching his masterpiece fall into place. I closed the journal. Suddenly, prison didn't feel like enough. He was already serving time for fraud. For theft. But not for this. Not for weaponizing our shared trauma. I called my attorney that evening. Can we reopen anything? I asked. On grounds of psychological abuse? She paused. It's difficult. But if we can prove coercion, manipulation, and intent, maybe. I looked at the journal again. I think we can, I whispered. Because the world thought Curtis was a side character. But I knew better. He wasn't just a villain. He was the author of every page we'd bled through. The hearing wasn't supposed to happen. Not after sentencing. Not after everything. But the journal changed it all. My lawyer moved fast, filing a civil petition for emotional coercion, familial manipulation, and intentional psychological abuse. The court approved a limited hearing, testimony only. Curtis was brought in shackled, thinner than before, his eyes sunken, but still wearing that familiar mask of control. As if no matter how long the list of charges grew, he'd still find a way to spin it. To charm. To twist. But this time, the room was different. This time, I was the one holding the script. I watched him take the stand. Sworn in. Adjusting the cuffs like jewelry. The judge asked, "Do you understand the claims against you?" He nodded. "Do you deny manipulating MS? Bianca Miles using confidential family records for your personal revenge?" His smirk faltered. "I don't deny it." Gasps echoed. The judge leaned forward. "Would you like to explain?" Curtis cleared his throat. For the first time in years, he looked small. "I found the records in Margaret Hathaway's attic. Lorraine's mother. Years ago. Before the divorce." He looked at me, stared at me. I knew Lorraine had a twin. I knew Bianca didn't know. But I saw the resemblance. And I knew. I could use it. The courtroom was silent. I fed Bianca the truth like poison. I told her she'd been robbed. That she was owed something. That if she became more like Lorraine, people would see her as the real one. "Why?" the judge asked. Curtis looked down. "Because Lorraine left me," he said. "And she didn't break. She didn't crawl back. She thrived. I lost control. So I used Bianca to take it back. Piece by piece." My breath caught in my throat. The judge asked, "And the forged signature? The obituary?" He nodded. "I wrote the first draft. Told Bianca it was just a legal formality. That if Lorraine disappeared, we could close the estate." "Disappeared how?" the judge asked. Curtis hesitated. Then said, quietly, "I told Bianca we could say she wandered off. That no one would question it if the medical records matched. I planted the seeds. I didn't tell her to hurt Lorraine. But I built the world where that would feel like an option." My chest burned. Not just from betrayal. From the realization that I'd lived in the presence of premeditated erasure. That he'd spent years laying bricks beneath my feet, just so one day he could pull the floor out. And then he said the thing that shattered me. I used to stand at the top of the stairs, Curtis whispered, and wonder if I startled her. Yelled loud enough. Would she fall? The room exploded. The judge slammed the gavel. Bianca's counselor, seated behind me, gasped. My hands gripped the arms of the bench like I was falling backward in time. He never touched me. But he thought about it. He never shoved me. But he dreamed of my fall. I turned to my lawyer. File for attempted psychological harm. Reopen everything. But she grabbed my wrist. You don't need to, she whispered. He just did it for you. On record. Curtis looked at me then. No more smirk. No more mask. Lorraine, he started. But I stood before he could finish. I walked toward the exit without a word. Because I had waited too long to be spoken to like a victim. And now? He was no longer my captor. He was just another man behind glass, trapped in a story he could no longer control. Before I begin, if this story stirred something in you, if you've ever been erased, manipulated, or made to feel invisible by the people who should have held you, subscribe my channel. Comment below, where are you from? Because betrayal has no hometown. But neither does justice. Now let me finish what they started. The final court hearing was quiet. No cameras. No reporters. Just wood panels, whispers, and 2 final verdicts. Curtis Miles sentenced to 28 years, combining prior fraud, attempted psychological harm, and recorded intent to engineer death by coercion. Bianca Grace Hathaway, my twin, formally granted court-mandated psychiatric treatment with limited community reintegration after 7 years of monitored therapy. Restitution was ordered. But the real victory wasn't legal. It was my name. The court confirmed full return of the deed. My mother's inheritance. My financial identity. Even my voice. But I didn't sell the house. I didn't remodel it either. Instead, I opened the front door one last time. Breathed in the past. And changed the locks. Then I did something none of them expected. I turned it into a center. For women who had been betrayed by family. For women erased by guardianship fraud. For women whose lives had been rewritten without their permission. It's called the Echo Room, where victims speak and echoes stop. Elena helped me decorate. Mrs. Holloway donated books. And the very first support group had 15 women. All over 50. All survivors. One of them looked at me and said, "You tell your story like it's fiction." And I smiled. That's because they tried to write me out like a plot twist. But I wrote myself back in, like a storm. Bianca sent me one final letter. Handwritten. I understand now what I did. I tried to take what was never stolen. I blamed you for what Mom never said. And I carried the silence like a sword. I won't ask for anything. But if you ever come visit, there's a bench in the garden. I'd like to sit there someday. With you. Just once. Sister. I haven't responded. Not yet. Because forgiveness is not a door, it's a bridge. And some bridges take time to cross. But me? I'm not lost anymore. I live in the home they tried to steal. And every time I walk through it, I remember one thing. You can't bury a woman who already grew her roots in fire. Was this story emotional for you? Did it remind you of someone who once tried to erase you? Drop your thoughts, experiences, and where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel for more stories that dig deep, break silence, and remind us we are never too old to rise.